Welcome to Meditations, a Stoic podcast, a 12-episode limited series exploring the writing of Marcus Aurelius. Through this work, we will examine the philosophy of Stoicism, how it applied to the life of Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, and how it applies to our own lives today. Who am I speaking with here? Who's this man over here with the microphone?
I'm Devin Kivioya, and I really like history, and I'm glad to be here with you, Jared.
Oh, nice. I am Jared, as you just said, Jared Poirier. I like history as well, and I also like philosophy a great deal, and I've been spending more of my time lately doing philosophy, which has been a very fun and rewarding experience. And I guess I can't be pumped because it's Stoic Podcast, but I am thrilled to be here recording with you today. So we are covering book 3 of Marcus Aurelius Meditations, which shouldn't surprise anybody because last week we covered book 2. It'd be pretty fucking weird if we covered something else.
Yeah, that would kind of be unexpected.
Yeah.
It's good to be different, though.
That would really subvert people's expectations, but I think it would also make this podcast like really, really fucking confusing. So
that's the word I had in my head. Yeah.
Anyways, so let's get into a little bit of historical background, since that's what we usually do at the top of the podcast. We already talked a bit in episode 2 about the Marco-Romantic Wars, the Roman Empire bumping up against these like Germanic tribes as it tries to expand. I guess we don't really have to get any deeper into that. There are various like Germanic tribes that were involved other than the Quadi, who we talked about more in chapter 2. There were the Macromani and the Sarmatian. I guess I'm saying that right. Sarmatian. Yeah.
Sarmatian, I think.
Oh,
is
Sarmatian.
How most people say it in English.
Right.
And there was another group in the area called and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, but I think it's the Azigis.
Okay.
But that, like, there's probably a lot more groups, and I mean, these were also tribal groups, so they were disparate as well. These weren't like unified governments that the Romans were dealing with. They were just groups of groups.
They sound pretty groovy, man. I would go check out a band called the Azilis or whatever you said.
The Azigis, yeah. To me, it sounds like a Spanish dish. Like, would you like to try some Azigi?
Yeah, I would try it, man. I would taste that. I love all foods pretty much, so I can get down with it.
I'm kind of fussy.
You're not fussy?
No, I am kind of fussy. Yeah.
You are kind of fussy. Food. Yeah, you like Canadian food. You're a true French Canadian with your food taste, I believe.
Just throw gravy on it.
Yeah, I succumb to that every now and then as well. So let's talk a little bit about the Roman Empire itself. I guess that's something that we could get into a little bit more detail on. And I think it's also important since like a lot of meditations, or maybe all of it, was written in the context of like these wars with like the Germanic tribes and stuff like that. So what was
pretty much all of it? Yeah.
What was like the rationale behind the whole like Roman Empire idea, and why was this like maybe different or like unique from other forms of like conquering and that we see, or other forms of like warfare that we see in history?
So as far as the idea of the Roman Empire itself, it evolved out of the Republic. I mean, as the Republic went through a period of weakening, the people in Rome started to value democracy less and started to value strong leadership more. And over time, the Republic slowly transitioned into the Empire, and that didn't happen all in one day. Julius Caesar went out of his way to not be called an emperor or a king in everything but name. Augustus, I think he used the title princeps, which means first citizen. So Rome had this idea of itself for a long time as being sort of this virtuous republic, and kind of, I guess, as one of the many justifications that it used for expansion would have been that it was essentially civilization and that everybody else was barbarians. That's kind of a common narrative that you see.
Yeah.
And it's reflective in things that, like, how they didn't really take a lot of time to learn or record anything about their enemies, which is why we know very little about the Macromani or the Quadi, because they didn't bother to learn anything about them. They were just barbarians to the Romans. And that's how they saw the world. There was outside and there was inside.
Yeah, and maybe like the idea that they were building such a great society and that it was rule of the people, and like that the rulers were really concerned about like the average citizen and all types of things, that just what you were saying, that gave them the opportunity to then to justify the
all these places that we're going, they need what we're going to bring to them.
Yeah. And I think it's, for me personally, just because I was listening to Dan Carlin's Hardcore History on Vikings, it did get me thinking, just like he's the best. He's the best. Dan, come on the show. No, he never will. He is pretty stoic though. But yeah, comparing it to the Vikings, that idea of like kind of just plundering, like invading and plundering, and then oftentimes getting like paid to leave or whatever. It's not really like that. It's more like incorporating, well, yes, invade and plunder for sure, right? Like you gotta do that. But also incorporate, like make them part of the empire. So if you were actually like conquered by the Roman Empire, it's not like you were just like completely subjugated. Like you were subjugated. You were the lesser party in a relationship, but there was still a relationship, right? It wasn't.
There were also various levels of this.
Yeah.
The Roman government treated different political bodies, which it conquered, with varying levels of cooperation or oppression based on how difficult that they had made life for Rome, usually. And so, yeah, you are right, though. You were the kind of subordinate power. But eventually, over time, a lot of places became very Romanized. Partially through the importing of, like, Roman institutions, and partially because Roman people would actually immigrate from Rome to those places. So, for example, like Spain, ancient Spain at the time, there was a lot of just, like, Italian descended Roman people living in Spain, like an entire whole culture there, sort of thing. So the Romans kind of like went and brought their institutions and brought their people, and eventually places just became more and more Roman over time.
Yeah, brought their
assimilation,
people,
I think, is the word.
Yeah. Brought their like their people, their institutions, but also, I mean, like technological things, right? Like, the Romans were like very good at building roads and like architecture and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely, excellent at infrastructure.
Yeah,
that was like their specialty essentially was excellent architecture, excellent engineering, an army that was also a mobile construction force.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Those roads weren't built by contractors; they were built by the military.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's kind of how.
That's why all roads lead to Rome.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about America sometimes. Is that it's a military with like that just so happens to have a country attached a little bit.
I was gonna say that the closest modern comparison to Rome's idea of expansion would be America's idea of manifest destiny.
Yeah, true. And we shouldn't like that. I don't know. All of this to say, like, I think it's important to give historical context to some of this, right? Like, not to say that it was awesome, like that Roman Empire, or not even to make like a value statement on it at all, really, in terms of like.
No, just that this is the time and place, set and setting of what's going on.
Yeah. So yes, there was a lot of negative shit if you like happen to be conquered by Rome, but it didn't come without its benefits, right?
Yeah, exactly. It could come with its benefits, and in some cases it very well did, and in other cases not so much.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's good for that section for chatting about, or if you're happy with that in terms of.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yeah. That's enough for historical context. We can dig right into book 3 here of Meditations, Marcus Aurelius. That's the book that we're reading, if you forgot. So I think it's helpful to distill, or at least like attempt, as we go through the books, right? Attempt to distill some of these chapters. And I think it's really cool if we can distill it down to like a phrase, or maybe some of them even like a single word. So I think that book 1, to distill it, would be have gratitude, right? It's like a gratitude exercise. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's absolutely fair.
Book 2, I think you could sum it up by just saying like, don't fear death.
Check. I couldn't sum it up better.
You couldn't?
No.
Oh, because if you try, I'm gonna bust out some wrestling moves on you.
You're gonna use dialectic analysis on me?
Oh shit! He comes out. I'll just hit you with a Hegel volume, and you'll be.
Yeah, that'll knock me out. I can't handle that shit.
Or worse, try to make you read a paragraph.
You know, I can't read Kant.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Well, some people. Yeah, I think it's more correctly pronounced Kant, but we'll move on. Book 3.
Fact boy Jared Poirier.
Philosophy fact boy. Number 3, book 3, chapter 3, whatever you want to call it. I think that it's best summed up, and you might disagree with this one, and maybe we can come back to this at like the end of the episode. But I think that book 3 is summed up well by the phrase "devote your life to a higher power." What do you think of that, like on its face, I guess?
The thought in my head was purpose. Devote your life to a purpose.
Sure, yeah, devote your life to a purpose.
But I mean, I think most people would say that's just about the same thing.
Devote your life to something greater than yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, is kind of the message. Cool. I'm glad that we can have some consensus around that. I think, as you were reading it, like you pointed out something to me in our correspondence, like around this book, and saying that like it seems like it's kind of reiterating stuff. It's a little bit almost seems like kind of repetitive from the last episode or the last book. It's
like he's really trying to remind himself, like really get it into his head. Mm-hmm. It's probably good that he didn't have yellow sticky notes, because they would have just been everywhere.
Yeah, or like an editor would have came through and said, "You can get rid of this whole chapter. You don't need it.
Just scratch this out. You said that already."
just you already said live in the moment and that you're going to die, right? You already said that.
I was wondering. I just had like a quick thought the other day. Like maybe he was just going senile and he'd forgot that he'd already written the other chapter.
Yeah, maybe.
He wrote the same one twice. I doubt that. I'm just.
I can somewhat agree with you, like, with that whole point, right? That is that he's reiterating stuff a little bit. But I also think that this chapter provides some really important like clarifications and additions to like his personal worldview and his philosophy that he's trying to communicate here.
I would definitely say there's some additions. I'd say sometimes it requires so much thought that I don't know if I would go with clarifications. I mean, if you have to sit around and think about a clarification, it's more of an addition than a clarification.
Yeah, I guess. Let's not get caught up in the difference between the two, I suppose. It doesn't really matter. He adds... But he adds some shit.
He adds
some shit. And adds levels of, like, clearness or, like, whatever to some of his ideas. Like, he clarifies some of his ideas, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. I don't know. I believe that he does, and we can, like, fucking, I don't know, get into it more later on. Also, I found that this chapter is, like, deceptively deep. In fact, there's an entire next section of this podcast that I'm going to devote to literally one paragraph. So,
okay.
Yeah, there's quite... Would you agree with that? There's, like, quite a lot of references here to, like, other stuff that you can go read into, right?
There is, yeah. I think that they're definitely reflective of what Marcus Aurelius thought of himself and what his role in history was, and how much pressure he felt he was under. That's what it seems to look like to me when he's kind of putting these great people in his reminders about how to live his life.
I think maybe it is that, and it's also like the opposite in a way, like trying to not think about himself as such of an important like ruler and stuff like that, or at least like not getting caught up in that idea that he was having like a big effect on history or something. Like reminding himself that all of these, I think he's saying these men like are greater than me.
Possibly, but so if that's the list of people that's greater than him,
What
is the list of people that is not greater than him? What is implicit in that statement that is not shown? Obviously, right?
Yeah.
This is reflective of what he thought of himself, whether you're looking at it from the negative or the positive.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And that's okay. I'm a man of fairly excessive ego myself. I am not criticizing. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's kind of like saying like there's a few people smarter than me, Albert Einstein.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like, well, that Alexander the Great guy, he was pretty great. I guess I'm not greater than him.
Yeah, they literally put they put great right in his name, man. Like,
yeah, the bastard got to it before me.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a little. I guess it reveals something in both directions.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're talking section 3 here of book 3. So I have an argument, and you may like agree or disagree with me in terms of how I understand, or I think that we can kind of classify the people in groups. Each of them founded a transformative discipline or phenomenon. So they're literally founders of something that changed the world. And you might even like limit that to like the Western world if you want.
Yeah, it definitely would have been that way for the Romans.
For what they cared about, as we talked about earlier. Like they didn't really
and as far as they were aware.
Civilization extended to the borders of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you have it. That's not my view. But it's probably what they thought, right?
Well, it depends who you would have asked. I mean, Rome was so big, it's hard to like claim that anything in particular was uniform. But I think that's kind of how the senatorial class would have seen it on the surface. I think below the surface, it was just pretty clearly, just everybody trying to get as rich as possible.
Yeah, that's fair. Not
there's,
that much.
What's being said is happening, and there's what's actually happening.
Yeah, not that much has changed.
Yeah. I was trying not to say it, but I'm glad you did.
Anyways, I'm glad that we had Hippocrates. He was a guy. Let's go through some of these. Let's go through all of them.
Sounds good.
Hippocrates is a word that I know how to pronounce correctly. You've heard of this guy because of the Hippocratic Oath. He's definitely most famous for that. Everyone knows the Hippocratic Oath is do no harm, but some people know the rest of it. Practice to the best of your ability, share your knowledge, show compassion. Like these are all things that come out of Hippocrates. The idea of prognosis, clinical observation, categorization, classification of disease. Like he's like the guy that did that. Like he was like, everybody was going around like, oh, we got all these diseases, and he showed up and he was like, I'm gonna write it down. Like he was like the guy that decided to classify diseases. We're talking like very, very early stuff here, right? Clinical observation, like not something that we think that you would really have to discover, but somebody had to, right? Come up with this idea that you can like takes a patient, observe them over time, observe their symptoms, and then like make some type of like, I don't know, whatever doctors do. Come to some sort of conclusion. Yeah, diagnosis.
Diagnosis.
Yeah.
There's a quote from Hippocrates about how all doctors should know astrology. Apparently that's essential to practicing medicine.
I'm not sure how. I'm intrigued to learn more. I'll read into that.
It was a different time.
Yeah. And we're talking like when we say, he's like the father of medicine, right? Founder of medicine. Like as a profession, literally. Like he's the guy that was like, okay, this is a job now.
Yeah.
That you should be like a professional physician or whatever. So, Yep, pretty important dude. And Marcus Aurelius points out about each one of them that they died. So it does.
That seems to be a common theme with people.
That they keep
as I go through history. Every time I read about somebody, it seems like they eventually die. I'm not really sure what's causing it, but it's fairly consistent.
Yeah, they were killed by death.
Yeah. Apparently, like 70 or 80 years of oxygen exposure is lethal.
Yeah. It's not good for you, folks.
Yeah, it's bad.
The Chaldeans, that is the next group here. The founders of astronomy, maybe the founders of the occult as well. I can't really find that much about these guys.
I can't either. I think it's romanticization.
Yeah, maybe.
I think it's just romanticization of something foreign.
Yeah, that's definitely possible, like what he is referencing here. There is this thing called the Chaldean oracles, which is like a kind of spiritual manual. At first I thought it was kind of like revelations, and Marcus Aurelius talks about like the Chaldeans predicting the future. But it's not really like the oracles isn't really that, like, despite the name. It's the closest thing that I can come to explaining it, or like my like very surface level perception. It's kind of like a D&D world book for like the universe. Like it has all these like interrelationships, and it's like this kind of god did this, and or not even like this, more like this force did this, which caused this force to in turn do that, and kind of like a cosmology. That's the word that I was looking for. And I didn't come up with it until this podcast. Yeah, it's like a cosmology. Yeah, there you go.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And this whole idea of like secret knowledge and like secret rituals and like the secret to like access to the blueprint of the universe and that shit is kind of in this Chaldean oracles. Yeah.
Okay, got you.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's when we get to the great conquerors.
Yeah, I think there may be. Well, we can debate this. Are they fairly called the founders of empire? Again, in like the Western Greco-Roman sense.
No, even the Romans would have been aware of older empires like the Assyrians and ancient Egypt and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Even the Romans, even by the time of the Romans, like human civilization was quite old, and they were not unaware of that.
Yeah, so they only discounted the achievements of other people unless it came to warfare. Then they were impressed, right?
Well, I mean, it's not that they were impressed; it's that they weren't unaware that they had come from places. I mean, like before they were a major empire, they were reverent of the Greeks as great warriors, just like everybody around the Mediterranean was.
Mm-hmm.
They understood that there were things that had come before them.
Yeah, maybe founders of the
we're civilization now.
Yeah, maybe founders of like the Roman Empire or something like that. Even though Alexander the Great is what?
He was Macedonian.
Greek, basically. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, the founders of like the Greco-Roman like tradition of empire, you could say then.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Yeah, true. That's a lot of words. Hopefully they mean something.
Pompey was not that. Pompey was essentially Caesar's rival.
Okay, true. But another like great conqueror, or whatever.
A good military leader. Yeah, not by any means like a greatest of all time, but he was really good in his time. Mm-hmm. He was noteworthy.
Anyways, they conquered a lot of people. They burned down a lot of cities, and eventually, like, they also got burned down by the universe. You know,
good times.
Yeah,
good times.
Good times, I suppose. This one is crazy, man. How fucking deep this stuff is. Like, Democritus and Heraclitus. Heraclitus. Democritus and Heraclitus. I dug pretty deeply into these two gentlemen, and I think that they are the founders of theoretical physics. It's quite a claim.
I love that idea.
It's quite a claim. But it's so striking to me that we have these two camps in terms of like when you try to say what is at like the bottom level of the universe, right? Like to try to explain like the forces that are behind everything that happens, right? Democritus is the dude who came up with atomic theory, like literally the idea that the universe is made out of atoms. That is wild.
And that is super wild, especially when like, and I mean, I don't know, would they have had a way to empirically test and verify that back then, or was he just guessing? Because if he was just guessing, like, damn.
It doesn't seem like he was guessing, man. It seems like the gods just told him or something, to be honest. Nothing exists except atoms and empty space. Everything else is opinion. That's
the
a
gods
quote.
Just told him isn't an explanation to me. That
I
doesn't
know, I'm
explain
sorry.
anything.
I'm sorry. I can't explain it either, man, how he figured that stuff out, but he was right. Like, maybe not strict, like, I'm sure he said some stuff that didn't make sense, right? To like the modern understanding.
I'm full of that shit. I get it.
But anyways, pretty wild. And there's also this idea of like determinism that comes out of Democritus, right? Like, yeah, this idea, and it's strikingly similar to like the debate that went on between like Albert Einstein, you know, who was working on like atomic theory, and then when like the whole quantum ideas started to emerge, and you know, Albert Einstein has this famous saying that God doesn't play dice, right? So that like the universe isn't random or whatever, right? They were having this same debate back then. Heraclitus has this idea of like conflagration of the universe, essentially that like the universe is constantly at war with itself is how I would kind of explain it. The idea of like flux, that like everything is undetermined, I suppose. He also like focuses on the logos, which is like kind of universal consciousness. And then he's also misanthropic, which is kind of interesting. He's like a list of contradictions in a way, but I think that he's a good kind of stand-in for the modern like quantum like uncertainty principle and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that it sounded pretty similar to that when you were talking about flux.
Yeah, this idea, it's expressed pretty well in the quote, "No man ever steps into the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and he is not the same man."
Man, that's like a line from Pocahontas.
I don't know, is it deeper than Pocahontas? I think.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Do you agree with that, by the way?
Yeah, life has changed. Everything has changed. All moments and all things.
Yeah.
Even the atoms and cells in our body. 7 years from now, the pieces of my body will not be the same pieces they are now.
Yeah, or even like at any instant they're not, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Everything has changed at all moments.
Yeah, pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So that's motion. I just think it's like very striking that these guys had this comprehension of the universe. You know, so long ago, like in ancient Greece, they're having the same conversation or same debate about like the nature of the universe that we're having now, just in like a different language with like different terms, basically.
Makes you wonder if the questions can be answered.
Damn. Should we just stop trying?
Some questions are not really there for the answer. The question is the purpose.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, we're along for the ride, I suppose, right?
One way or the other.
Yeah. Anyways, these guys figured out all this shit about the universe, and then do you know what happened, Devin?
They died?
They died.
Times.
Yeah, Socrates is another guy. Kind of, you could say, the founder of philosophy. Or like the founder of the Greco-Roman tradition of philosophy, if you want to be very specific. Yeah, he was big into epistemology, like the study of what exists and how we can... Like, what is knowledge, right? That literally that idea. Yeah. How do we know what we know, right? was concerned deeply with like ethics, and also came up with this idea of like dialogue, which is what we talked about before on this podcast. What this podcast is, right? Like a dialogue between two people. It's actually helpful that you and I don't like see reality the same way, because like your view of reality and mine, in the dialogue between those things, like a deeper truth emerges. And this was like something that Socrates figured out.
Yeah, dialectic, I think, is what he called it.
Sure, dialectic. And then that also leads to Hegel, and that's going to be a lot of fun for everybody. So,
yay!
Yay! I've got 3 Socrates quotes to choose from. Oh yeah, before we do that, I just wanted to point out for everybody, just because like not everybody is like as read up on this stuff. Even like Devin and I had to go and double check. Socrates was the teacher of Plato, and then Plato taught Aristotle. And I also think it's interesting that this becomes like more scientific in a way over time. Like Socrates is like kind of saying live how you want and just like be a good person. Plato is saying like within these structures be a good person, and then Aristotle is saying like let's like really classify things and start to approach like the scientific, right?
Yeah, it's very much from the beginning to the end. There's a big change from like simply kind of like taking in a thing to really, really trying to quantify.
Yeah.
Like it goes from kind of a more passive to a more active examination.
I really like the way that you put that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Going from like observation to classification in a way, or like we've observed for so long, now we can start to like make some conclusion. It's like the scientific method in a way. Yeah. You want to pick a quote here from the 3?
The only true wisdom is in knowing that you know nothing. Mm-hmm. I think that if there's a profound quote anywhere, that's one of them. I think that if you're honest with yourself, the more you learn about anything and pretty much everything as you add it up, the more you realize that you really don't know that much, because A, there's just so much to learn, and B, no matter what you pick, there's always going to be somebody who knows more than you.
That's true, yeah. And even the smartest person cannot know everything that exists in the universe. Like, it's impossible.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. It does take the pressure off a bit, though, knowing that the pursuit of knowledge is good in and of itself, like it's worthwhile in and of itself, that you don't have to necessarily like come up with some conclusion. Like, no one is going to end like I don't know, academia or end the search for knowledge more specifically.
No.
Yeah.
I'd say that's a very natural thing.
Yeah. No one's coming out with a book that's like, this book is out. There will never be the last book.
Well, there will be a last book someday.
But, I mean, because humanity destroys itself.
Yeah, or the sun does. One or the other.
Yeah. I'm more saying that, like, someone puts out a book, and then it's like books
that's it. We're done with books.
Books are done now. Like, there's no point. Yeah. It would be unlikely if this ever happens in any discipline, but certainly not in, like, the quest and search for knowledge, right?
I hope you're right.
Yeah.
I hope you're correct.
Yeah. But it's possible, man. I don't know. Maybe one day. Maybe one of us will write that book, the book that ends all books, but...
I'll write a book that's so goddamn bad that everybody will be like, nope, that's it. You've ruined it.
It should have been Dune, man. Dune should have been the last book. We didn't need more books after that, right?
That's a fair point. It was pretty damn good in my mind, although there are some fair criticisms of Dune.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, but let's not do that.
Yeah. Okay, I could talk for hours. Okay, so yeah.
You'll have to check out Devin's other Dune podcast for that. As if,
yeah.
Right? Yeah. He has the time for that.
I got the time. Do you have the time?
Yeah. For a Dune podcast?
Yeah.
Holy shit. I don't know. Let's talk about it later. Okay. Let's get into some ideas from book 3. And I think we're going to really try to avoid like quoting so much, especially since like you and I are reading different editions, right?
Yeah.
So let's just talk about some like concepts that emerge from reading book 3. And you can tell me if these are like a fair, to your reading, a fair kind of summation of some of these concepts. I think the first thing that he says, and this is where I'm going to also defend my idea that not only is he adding things to like the theory here, or adding things to the philosophy, I guess, but also like clarifying things in an important way. So,
okay.
Not only will you die, but your mind will weaken before you do. And this has 2 implications. You don't have a lot of time to figure out your meaning in life and start pursuing that. And also, you can't rely on your mind alone, so you need to like dedicate yourself to something bigger than that. What do you think of that stuff? Like, did I sum it up well? And,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think you've got it.
And do you agree?
I think these can be like really valuable things in your life. I think that sometimes like the idea of a search for greater meaning can cause you to lose focus on kind of the smaller things that give your life meaning around you. And so I think that it's important not to get lost in that either.
That's true. Yeah. And not also get lost in like the reliance on your mind, right? Like what we were saying about like the search for knowledge and all of that. Like so, to go back to what we were talking about in the previous chapter, like trying to free yourself from dependence on all of these like impermanent things such as money, status, what have you, right? The good judgment of society, like your reputation, all of these things that are, ultimately just going to be dust, right? One of those things that you shouldn't get too reliant upon is like the strength of your own mind, because that's something that you're going to lose.
Already losing, probably.
I guess. Does my mind work shittier than... No, I don't think so. I don't think I've hit the peak yet, to be honest.
I think I'm going completely crazy.
I think that you can, like, I've known you since high school. I think that your mind handles like complexity better, and you're able to like hold more ideas in your mind and like compare them against each other than you were in the past.
I used to have some pretty serious fast brain.
Yeah. Yeah, and like bouncing to the next thing or like hyper fixating on shit and stuff like that. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is something that I definitely do as well. Something to avoid. Maybe that's something that comes with wisdom, is that you stop being like that so much.
There's all different kinds of wisdom.
Indeed. So, and that's a little section where we can definitely get some wisdom. Another thing that I think emerges from this chapter is being unselfish and looking out for the welfare of others. There's like numerous quotations about that. Philosophy is a tool. He specifically, in my translation, I'm not sure about yours, references a scalpel. Like says philosophy is a tool like a scalpel.
It's interesting. I'm going to go and get another surgery on my neck and see if the surgeon can use philosophy to cut down to my spine.
What he means, though, in all seriousness, is that in the same way that you employ any tool, like, you need to fix your deck, like you're going to get a drill, right? It's like you need to fix your life. Get philosophy. Yeah.
I mean, I can't do that with a hammer.
No. No matter how hard you try. So I really like that, and I think it ties in well with the whole like Stoic ideal, right? That it's supposed to be a practical philosophy, right?
Yeah. It's for your life.
Yeah, and then the only times when I will read some quotes here and we can compare translations, and these I think are also like two important clarifications specifically rather than additions. Relationship between heaven and earth, that everything that happens on the earth influences heaven, and everything that happens in heaven influences the earth. And this doesn't have to be heaven specifically. We can just say like the transcendental realm, or like what's inaccessible to us in physics, right? Like what we can't see influences us, and we influence it. I think that that's like an important like interrelationship that's being drawn out here. I just think it's interesting. Does that same concept emerge in your translation?
Yeah, he uses a different word. He uses the word divine. And it's a bit convoluted. For neither wilt thou do anything well which pertains to man, without at the same time having a reference to things divine, nor the contrary.
Yeah, you won't do it well. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
And so there's probably definitely a lot to unpack there. It's hard to know where to start.
Yeah.
But that seems like the sort of thing that would resonate with a lot of people.
It makes you feel more significant and more powerful if the things that happen on earth can influence the divine.
Interesting.
Yeah. To me. Yeah. That's one key takeaway, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And it's also kind of like a dialectic.
In what way?
That what happens on earth influences heaven. What happens in heaven influences earth. You don't see a dialectic there?
I thought a dialectic was two people talking about something.
As it goes into like from like the ancient Greek tradition into like the German tradition, the meaning changes a little bit.
So like you're talking about something closer to duality?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. It is closer to
yes.
duality. Yeah, like a yin
yin
and yang type of thing or something like that.
Okay, then I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And then there's a similar kind of dialectic between fate and us, right? Between us and our fate. In my translation, we carry our fate with us, and it carries us, which is like very, very direct. I think yours is almost as direct.
For the lot which is assigned to each man is carried along with him and carries him along with it.
Yeah. I think this is a really good summation of what I was trying to like get a hold of, because I was starting to understand this idea in meditations of like our relationship with fate. And it's not just deterministic, right? It's not just that there is a fate and there's nothing that you can fucking do. Like no matter what you do, the same thing's going to happen. That you have no free will. It's not that. It's that you have a fate, but you still get to choose whether or not you want to embrace your fate. That's how I see it.
Okay.
Yeah. It's almost like, and the way that it's put here, right? That like our fate carries us, we carry the fate. It's almost like that you're on like a picture, like being on a canoe going down the rapids or whatever, right? You always have the choice to get out of the canoe.
Technically.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that that's a pretty decent analogy for fate. It's going off the the waterfall, right? You can get out if you want.
Yeah.
So I think that's
so.
Yeah. Why? In which way not?
I don't really know. I'm still trying to work it out.
Still trying to work
What
out.
does getting out of the boat mean?
Killing yourself, I guess.
Oh, okay. Well, then, yeah, I understand what you're saying. Okay.
Or not just killing yourself, but like you're going down a different path. Like you can get on the train or not, right? In terms of your fate.
I guess so. Like, can I get on another train?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, then yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Now I really mixed metaphors though. Are we on a train? Are we in a boat? I'm not sure, but
that's a floating train.
So it's a boat train.
Yeah.
Let's go with that. What? Yeah, that like when you think about it, a steam powered boat is kind of a boat train, Devin.
I fucking love that. Fuck, I'm not going to be able to drop that for weeks.
There you go. That's a little mind virus for you, my friend. You enjoy. New to you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's good for this part. I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to spend too much time like reading quotes and comparing them, but I think that we do get to like some truth. And that's why I'm glad that we are reading like the different, there's a dialectic between the editions, if you want to put it that way, or both.
Yeah, we can say that. Yeah.
A dialogue and a dialectic, like both.
I love it.
Unifying of the meanings of those things. All right. Questions, critiques. Is there anything in this this week's chapter that like you were unable to sympathize with, or like I think maybe the best way to put it, that like bounced off of your mind, where you were like, no, I don't understand this, or I don't like this idea?
There was like a fair bit of it, and I mean, I guess most of the parts of it that involve the idea of being free to choose our fate don't really resonate with me.
Okay.
It's a lot like somebody giving you a choice between one thing and itself.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I'm giving you a choice. You have agency here. You can have this sandwich, or you can go to bed and not have any food at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like a similar...
That's how it feels.
It's like a similar choice which the Roman Empire gave to people, right? Like you can choose, you can choose to be the lesser in this arrangement, or
you could choose to be dead,
or you could choose to be still the lesser, but you don't get to say, like, you didn't come into it willingly.
Yeah.
It's like you're the lesser whether or not, so you might as well accept the terms type of thing.
That's essentially empire, right?
Yeah.
I think the Greeks would have put it this way. It's better to drink wine and tutor the Romans in math than it is to fight them.
Yeah. Yeah, true. It's a tough thing to accept, right? This idea that, and, you and I, like, think a little bit differently about this, but I think that, like, I don't know, you're relating the thing about fate to, like, the idea of, like, submission. Are they the same thing to you?
I don't know. I mean, like, the idea of fate doesn't make me feel like I have any freedom to choose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if my life's all planned out for me by fate, why don't I just put her on autopilot?
But when we're saying, like, fate the way that Marcus Aurelius understands it, fate as, like, a dialogue with your choices.
I'm not quite sure what you mean.
So that very idea that we carry our fate with us. So you can always choose to embrace your fate or not.
Yeah.
It still feels like not a choice to you.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a choice to me at all.
Yeah. Choosing to like submit to the universe, it doesn't feel like
do this or do this and like it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't get it.
Well, it's definitely like something that it comes through a lot in this like chapter, right? The idea, the idea that the body is a servant of the spirit. You need to subordinate yourself to the gods. Submission to the divine. All phrases from my translation, right? So, in order to make this like stick to like your brain, I've like struggled to come up with a way to do it. I think that that we're somehow, by submitting, we become more free. That freedom and submission are two sides of the same coin. I can accept this. You can't.
Yeah, that's just that straight up bounces off of me. I don't really get it. Like, I understand that it's an idea, and I get that. But to me, that seems counterintuitive. That the idea of freedom and submission seem mutually exclusive to me.
Yeah. So I want to take it to something that I think like a lot of like people can understand, which is the social contract. It's something that like a lot of us come across just in like the most basic like reading of philosophy, right? Probably one of the best delineations of this idea emerges from Hobbes. And are you like very familiar with Leviathan, like that work by Hobbes, Thomas Hobbes?
Not a whole lot, no.
Not a whole lot. So the whole idea is basically, and going to that point about like freedom, right?
Yeah.
Freedom and how it is related to submission. So in Hobbes, you have freedom, the freedom that's given to you by the state of nature.
Yeah.
So it's like absolute freedom, right? It's freedom, but it's freedom at the expense of what? Safety.
Okay.
Because if everybody has like absolute freedom, then you also have the freedom to take away other people's freedoms or take away other people's life, right? It's kind of the problem of the state of nature, right, for Hobbes and for all of us, I suppose, if you accept it. So the deal that we make, we give up a freedom. We give up that absolute freedom of the state of nature, right, that we're born with. You're born naked, screaming, and afraid, but also free.
Yeah.
So you give that up to the state. What you get in return is security, but you also get, and this is where like, I'm sorry to say Hegel 3 times in the same podcast.
Yeah.
But this is where like that, the Hegelian idea of like the spirit, right? Like the spirit of the times is a better way of understanding it. That we all share a conception of what is right as a society, and that like conception, that like consciousness is what makes us truly free, like freer than we could be in the state of nature, right? Because what you have is not a whole bunch of subjective views of freedom competing against each other in a war of all against all, to use a phrase from Hobbes. What you get is one single conception of good and freedom, which is common to all, like a common consciousness, like Geist, or what some of the early Greek philosophers talk about. I'd have to go look up the exact word that they use.
Would you say the modern world reflects that idea?
That we all agree on like the same idea
that
of
we all share an innate morality?
Is there a collective human consciousness, or is there like a spirit of the age, the logos? Heraclitus calls it the logos. The logos is common to all, yet most men live as if each had a private intelligence of his own.
Yeah.
I think that's probably true. What do you think?
This idea of like a common consciousness sounds like we're talking about magic to me, and this is where you kind of lose me.
Well, this is why Hegel like grounds all of this stuff, and I maybe will be able to explain it better as we, because it seems like not a very tenuous concept that you can really grip. This is like one of the greatest things that Hegel provides, is like a way of classifying all of this stuff that actually makes sense. The idea that part of your conception of yourself, it doesn't exist in your own mind. It exists in the mind of others.
That's their conception of me, though, not mine.
Again, I don't really want to go so deep. maybe in a future podcast. But can you at least understand that difference between subjective and objective freedom? Subjective freedom being the freedom, absolute freedom of the state of nature. Objective freedom being the freedom that you get as a member of a free state. You get that, right?
I get the idea behind it. I have some minor disagreements with it, but I get the idea.
And it could be the same with God and the same with fate, right? By submitting to God, you give up a certain radical freedom, you get a different freedom.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And similarly with fate, by submitting to fate, you give up maybe the freedom to do whatever the fuck you want, but you get a whole list of freedoms that like come along with like being part of fate or whatever, being part of the universe, submitting and getting a freedom in return. Sure. Okay. Sweet. That's all I want.
Yeah, it's an idea. I acknowledge that it exists. I think I understand.
Yeah.
The logic behind it.
Yep. Well, I have a comic that I drew based on Slavoj Zizek's kind of rantings on this, and I'll send it to you, and maybe it'll help.
Okay.
Anyways. And I think we already talked about the other one, like that you can't purely rely on your mind. But another like kind of critique, question, whatever. The idea that like Marcus Aurelius keeps talking about, be part of society, like be part of something bigger, like care about mankind or whatever, right? Be concerned about the welfare of people. Is it possible to be a philanthropist and a warlord?
I'd say that it is because we're not all one thing, and we're not all one thing to all people either. And we're not all things to all people, rather, I think is the expression. But if you kind of look at a lot of the figures in our history who get revered or who get a lot of attention, a lot of them did really horrible things. There's a quote from Firefly that everybody who ever had a statue made of them was some kind of son of a bitch.
Yeah, true. And it's all a matter of perspective too, right? Like everyone's hero is someone else's villain. I really like I like Vladimir Lenin a lot, right? A lot of people like I have a bust of Vladimir Lenin. All right, don't tell anybody.
Yeah, and in some circles he's public enemy number one.
Many circles, right?
Yeah.
And but that's true for anyone, right? Like from George Bush, like some people that might have, or like any Osama bin Laden, right? Some people don't like him.
No, it goes both ways, right? Everybody's hero is somebody's villain, and everybody's villain is somebody's hero.
And maybe there's also this kind of like dialectic between the two. Maybe it's almost like only Nixon can go to China. Like only a warlord can be a philanthropist.
That's an interesting concept, and there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, I don't think a lot of people who are not warlords have been philanthropists, so I think it's easy to achieve philanthropy without it. However, being a warlord certainly might provide the means to do it a lot more.
But isn't like, so the best, who's like the most prolific modern philanthropist, right? It's Bill Gates by anybody's approximation.
Well, that's because he has the means, but yeah.
Okay, so by participating in the capitalist economy as it is, isn't like the military industrial complex one of the biggest constituent parts of that? So isn't he in a way a warlord? Gathering all that wealth and things like this. I think that's like
I'd say he's more of a war profiteer than a warlord.
More of a war profiteer. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So I don't know. Consider that, and maybe don't be so pissed off about it. Maybe it's all okay. Let's apply it to today, since that's the point of this podcast. Is there anything in this that resonated with you the most in terms of I can take this and, just as you can use a scalpel, use this, use as philosophy as a tool.
There's a vein through everything Marcus Aurelius seems to write, which it really seems to be pointing towards be present in the moment where you are and with what you're doing. Mm-hmm. That seems to me to be an undercurrent of everything that he's putting down here. And so that deeply resonates with me. Just the idea of examining it too is very resonant with me.
Examining that like meditative practice type of thing, or like mindfulness.
Sort of examining your life and looking for purpose, but also that meditative practice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's important. Not just to like meditate and to like be like present and mindful, but that's almost like the next level, eh? Is like a meta analysis of your own mindfulness. That's like double meditation.
How mindful can I be about being mindful?
Yeah, man. Am I mindful enough in my mindfulness? Yeah.
At some point you're gonna fucking blow.
How
brain,
close is that getting to Heidegger's thingliness of the thing? You know.
Oh my god! I don't want to.
I totally agree with you 100% with that. Another one that like comes through is recognizing like your most important contributions to the world for what they are. I think it's really easy to get obsessed with what we think is going to be our important contribution to the world. Maybe like what we spend a lot of time on, what we dedicate ourselves to in terms of like our professional, creative, whatever life, right? And actually looking at like what is truly important, like all of those things that you do commit time to that you maybe don't like on their face assume is going to be like your legacy or the most important thing that you do with your life. I was talking to a photographer friend of mine. I don't know if I'll drop his name on this, but he said something very interesting to me just about my own personal life. Like he's a good friend of mine. He understands me well. And he said that it doesn't really matter if I like live out some like great important like revolution like politically or something like that. It's not important if I be like a big political leader or like figure in history. It's not even important that I make like a big like artistic contribution, like come up with some like big perhaps some huge film that changes the world or something like that. What's important is that I adopted my dog. Like I saved one dog's life.
A friend once told me that heroes are people usually who are not doing great things that you hear about. They're people who just do their job every day, whatever they have to do, just because they have to do it, even when they don't want to.
And society wouldn't function if it wasn't for everybody doing just that.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah, that's what makes the world go around.
Yeah. So, like, I think that is a very Stoic practice. Like, it's really helped my mindset a lot, because I think it's very easy to get caught up in being like, what is my fate and what am I supposed to do? Am I living up to my potential? Is a thought that I think haunts a lot of us and maybe prevents mindfulness, right? And
I think the idea of potential causes us to do shoulding.
Yeah.
I should be doing this. I should have achieved this.
Yeah.
That's, potential kind of
and
gets...
if you're not careful, you might should your pants.
I might have just done it there. To me, potential is a word teachers throw at you when you're not giving them what they want.
Yeah.
And so I think it's an idea that causes us in our mind to discount the positive around us when we talk about potential.
Yeah, if you're so worried about the potential of where you're going, like you're not enjoying the ride, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Good point. And
if you're not if you're not like present in the moment, you're not giving the best of yourself to anything or anyone.
Yeah, that's very true. If you're always worried, like even if you were like pursuing the thing that you wanted to do, like if it is music and you're like literally working on recording a song, and the whole time you're doing that, you're thinking like this song isn't good enough, then it's not.
Yeah, exactly. Because all you're focusing on is that it's not good enough.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Another one that came through for me really strongly is the idea that you'll have a lot more success if you work with the people and systems that are already in place rather than resisting them.
Yes. This is something that when I talk to people about the idea of voting, which is a thing, like I know a lot of people and they have a lot to say about the world, but they don't go out and vote. And so I'm constantly encouraging them.
Yeah.
And they say the system's a sham. And I say, well, how could it be a sham? It's being used against us successfully.
Yeah.
Which means that we could use it back. All you have to do is show up. You're better off to use the systems that are here than to just push yourself away from them, because you'll achieve more that way.
Mm-hmm.
Take what you have and work with it and make it better.
In the same way that philosophy is a tool, these systems are a tool.
Yeah.
So if you have to put a deck together and you show up and there's DeWalt's drill, and you're like, oh, well, I would prefer, what's another brand of drills? Milwaukee.
Oh, I love Milwaukee's.
I know, but if there's a DeWalt, buddy, you still got to build that deck,
Yeah, absolutely. If you show up and your hammer's missing a handle, then you put electrical tape on that handle and you keep going.
Yeah, you duct tape it to your hand and you go, I'm Hammer Man. And then you
Edward Hammerhands.
See, there's lots of great puns, right? You can enjoy the ride.
I'm sure Edward Hammerhands would never be single.
No. Oh, I thought you were going to say, wouldn't be a good film.
Never be single.
Yeah.
Call me Hammerhands.
I'm trying to even just wrap my head around. I'll need a philosophical fucking framework just to understand what you just said. Anyways,
draw it for me.
I'll draw it for you. Also this idea, which I really like in terms of applying philosophy, and maybe even applying spirituality as well. You could maybe extend it that far. That words and thoughts aren't good enough. You also need to act on them. So we've come back to this again, maybe in a different moralistic sense than before, but that if all you do is sit around and grow your beard hairs longer and you don't apply your philosophy, are you doing anything important?
Yeah, what good was it? Yeah.
Cool. You want to give these people some homework?
Yeah. Wait, where is it? Oh, it's not in the notes.
This podcast gives you homework. Make a list.
This podcast gives you homework. And the homework is to think of your achievements.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what it was. I'm sorry, Jared. It's not in the notes. It's in my phone.
Think of your most important contributions, and in the true Stoic sense. What are your most important contributions to the world, to the universe? Let's say. Yeah.
What is an important contribution to the universe?
That's up to you to decide. You're going to think about it. Think about it. Make a list. Write it down. You'll have to define that term as well. What is a truly important contribution to the universe? Yeah. That's part of the homework. That's the whole point of homework.
Careful, that's going to be a reflection of you, what you choose for that.
Yeah, true. Yeah. That's also a reflection of you whether or not you do the homework. But okay, you got to
that would cut me real deep in the high school.
Yeah, trying to use that public shame against you, but that's not what this podcast is about. You can do the homework or not. I don't care. No one's going to
public shame me if you want, but I'll probably enjoy it more than you'd like.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Maybe that's maybe the true homework is the negation of the homework itself. Anyways, let's not go down that path. Devin, do you want to drop the last quote on everybody? Do you have that in your notes?
Yes, I do.
Nice.
Happiness is the meaning and the purpose of life, the whole aim and end of human existence.